Are you a young graduate who is applying for the first job? Are you a young professional who is looking to transition careers? Surely one thing that will be very important to succeed is a strong CV. When I applied to the consulting firm McKinsey back in the days, I faced the same challenge. So in this video I want to share some of my knowledge by reviewing your CVs. So a couple of days ago on my Instagram I asked you to submit some CVs to me for me to potentially review them. If you want to have your CV included in potential future videos like this, follow me on Instagram. This is where I most likely will talk about this again. Before we start diving into the CVs, a couple of preliminary remarks. First of all of these things are of course just my humble opinions, my humble experiences. Surely the topic of how a strong CV looks like is a topic where many people have many differing opinions on, but feel free to challenge me also in the comments if you have another view on any of the points that I'm raising. So welcome to another coffee break here on my channel Firm Learning. My name is Heinrich and on my channel I want to help you to become successful in the first years of your career. In addition, also for both a CV and a cover letter template for you as a download, these were the very same templates that I used myself when I successfully applied to the consulting firm McKinsey back in the days. You'll find a link to them in the video description, so feel free to check them out. So let's start looking at this first CV here, and let's just go by a very first impression. So just looking at this, how does this seem? Does this seem professional and good or not? And I'd say this is not very bad. I mean, it's not terrible, but there's surely some things that you could improve. So let's look just at a couple of things that I think are not really on point, not really ideal here. And first, let's start with some alignment points. So I'm just zooming in here. Let's go up here. We see that here all kinds of different levels are used when things start, right? So here you have a level of text where at this level it starts. This here is a bit indented further to the right. This line here is even a bit further left than this stuff. This here is even further left. So you see all different types of layout levels where elements start. All right, next let's talk a bit more about the content. For instance, about an introductory text like this. So actually many CVs that I received, I saw people including a little intro text here in the beginning. And here I'm not saying that this is a deal breaker, that this alone will get you rejected, but let's just try to put ourselves into the shoes of a person who reads CVs. You will have a big stack of CVs, a big stack of paper on your desk. You will just go one after the other. We'll try to skim the CV for some keywords, for the key things that you did. Where did you work? Where did you study? What are your grades? What are your responsibilities? I would argue that these people will not even care to bother to start reading a big paragraph of text like this. So Max is a strategy and consulting manager and is aligned to the company capital markets practice. He has a professional understanding of the financial sector, blah, 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 blah. I mean, these are things that you will directly see if you read it, right? You're here a senior consultant. What did you do? Security settlement. Okay, got it, right? So no need for any explanations like this. Next, let's talk about a picture here in the top right. This is also a question that I get quite frequently. So are you supposed to include a picture in the CV or not? And here I'd say it really depends, probably most on the region where you apply to. So I'd argue more in the Anglo-Saxon countries, so UK, also the US and so on. I'd say it's rather unusual to include it for, of course, discrimination reasons. You don't want CVs to be assessed based on the looks of a person, for instance. In countries like Germany, I would claim that it is still very common to have a picture on your CV. So probably I would also still do it in a country like Germany. Though if you apply, for instance, via an online form, often then online forms have specific fields where you can upload a picture. So if you did already upload a picture to such a form, then I'd say you also don't need the picture on the CV. Personally, on my standard CV, I don't have a picture included. Of course, with the nice one-page format that I would recommend you to use in general. A picture takes a lot of space, often doesn't integrate that nicely in the layout. So if you can, I probably try to get away with not including it on the CV, but in some reasons it's surely not a problem. Next, let's talk about just a very general layout here of the CV where you have here the key content side on the left and then this additional bar here on the right. And actually several CVs that you sent me had variations of this layout. And my humble perspective on this is that I would probably rather not go for these layouts. So surely if you apply to a marketing agency or maybe another very creative job, sure, be creative, do some fancy, maybe also a bit unorthodox stuff on your CV. I trust there it's okay. But especially if you apply to more conservative industries like consulting or like banking thinking, surely you will not get invited to an interview because of the way how you layouted your CV. This is just not the way of thinking about this. The best case scenario is the people will just not care that you use the layout like this. But of course, the worst case scenario is that this will rub people the wrong way. People might feel like, maybe you didn't do your research, you didn't know how a typical CV layout for these industries look like. And surely this is not the impression that you want to leave. And I'd argue also from a functional perspective, layouts like this are not very effective. Let's just see how much space is wasted here with the personal info. The personal info you can usually include just in one line in the very header of your one-page CV. We will later see a couple of other examples of people did that, and same thing here for the languages. I mean, this takes so much space. You can just write this in one simple line, and let's not even get me started here on all these dots to indicate your language proficiency. Because indeed what we do see is that actually the font size here of the body of the CV is very small. This is a very small font size. And yes, I get it that on one-pager CVs often you have lots of text and often the font size cannot be too large, but this is very small, right? And you would have all these other opportunities to make more space for the text, increase the font size, and also in general, at least in the body of your CV, I would recommend you to always use the same font size. It always looks a bit unclean, not very polished. If you have here text with a larger font size, then here it gets smaller, this is larger again. It doesn't just look very clean, very polished. So rather go for the same font size whenever possible. Let's move to the second CV. And by the way, I will try on the different CVs to highlight different things, right? So only because I don't point out again the things that I maybe pointed out on prior CVs, of course, they still very much hold true. But let's just continue here, and very first impression, again, maybe think about this for yourself, right? What is the very first impression that you have? And I'd say it's rather good. I like it. I think it's very clear, very well organized. The layout seems nice and clean. In principle, I like it. Here we also see some of these a bit more modern layout elements, like these icons here to indicate your address, the phone, and so on. This blue border around your picture, this light gray or these blue bars here to indicate a new subsection. I mean, I don't know. So surely this won't get you rejected. Personally, I also think it looks good. Here still, probably myself, if I would write a CV for me, I would still go for the very conservative style without all these things included. The thing that probably bothers me most is just the length. And this is just a lot of content, 2 full pages. And let's also not forget that this person is still a student. And I know that the general rule is that up to 2 pages is okay. I think more than 2 pages is really bad. You should not do it. But I would still recommend you to go for the one-pager layout. Every single CV out there you can condense to a one-pager layout. Even if you have 30, 40 years of work experience, it's always possible to bring it to one page. Of course, what this means is that you need to focus. You maybe need to cut out some things which are not the strongest things you want to talk about or really reduce them to a minimum. But I trust that everybody already was in a position to review CVs. It's almost much nicer to have one page just instead of always needing to go back and forth across different pages. And also one page in general helps you much more to really focus on your awesomeness. So ideally the impression that you want to create is that someone reads your CV and every single line, right? Every single line just reads, wow, this is crazy. Impressive, impressive, awesome, never seen this is incredible. But if you drag out the content over 2 pages, usually you don't have enough things to really fill it with that much awesomeness. And then the awesome points really just get lost, the more mediocre points. And this is just not the first impression that you want to give. So let's just look at that. What are the things that maybe you would want to cut out, that maybe you don't want to focus on that much? And here if you read it, surely the big household names like BMW, Allianz and so on, these surely are the things you do want to focus on. But then you also read things like NIRA, Dynamics, AB, CA, Strategy, Consultants and so on. And if as a student you already have these very strong internships at BMW, Allianz and so on, do you think someone will really care that you worked at NIRA, Dynamics or CA, Strategy, Consultants? And again, don't want to come off here as condescending. I just don't know these firms. Maybe these are very great firms, some hidden champions in a very niche, but I'd argue the general HR content will just not know them. And just also one thing to understand is that you don't need to list every single work experience, every single internship that you ever completed throughout your life. So probably at the point when I applied to McKinsey at the end of my bachelor, likely half of the internships I ever did, I didn't even list anymore on my CV because I just replaced them by stronger points, by stronger stations at the point in time. And the other thing that I always find a little bit weird when I read this, especially on a student CV, are things like being an external consultant. Of course, this is always a little bit weird, right? You're a student. Why would a big company engage you as an external consultant? What type of experience was that? So this always leaves some question marks. If then you scroll scroll down. I think the explanation is that this person worked at Academy Consult. I just happen to know that organization because they are from Munich. They are a student-based consulting firm. So this is of course great and relevant experience, but then maybe just to condense it a little bit, you might be able to take these external consultant positions and then rather list them here, for instance, within the Academy Consult position, just to make this a little bit more intuitive how exactly that went. And this will help you to save some space and also help the reader of the CV just in a more intuitive way understand what exactly happened there, what exactly did you do here. Following the idea of saving space, also things like language skills, computer skills, hobbies, these are things that you can just very shortly write in one line. If you're looking for some inspiration on that, in the CV template that I will offer you as a download in the video description, you can see exactly how I did it in there. And then there's also this thing here in the end with the location, the date and the signature. I know that many people will tell you that you need to include it, at least in Germany. It's very customary to do so. To be honest, in all the applications that I wrote, I never included it. I always didn't see the point of doing that. It always felt like a waste of space to me. I would rather maybe sign the cover letter if you want to sign something. So judge this for yourself whether you want to include it or not. For me, it was never a problem to leave it out, but I do know that some people feel like it needs to be included on every CV. So trust you will decide what's right for you. As a last point, let's talk about the bullets that you write. And we will on a later CV probably talk a little bit more about how to write bullets, but just the one thing I want to point your attention to, what I would in general always avoid, is writing things like supporting something. This sounds very weak, right? It's really difficult to understand what you really did there, what your impact was, what your contribution was. Also things like developing of market and business field strategies here on top. I mean, these things are so vague. They really fail to highlight what your experiences really are, what the impact was that you created for that organization. But let's deep dive into considerations like this a bit more in the future. So let's look at the next CV. And here again, first impression, what do we think about this? I think what's very clear, just first sight, that this CV is far too long. I mean, this is frankly just unacceptable. You cannot make a CV with 6 pages. Really, 2 pages should be the absolute maximum. I would recommend you to only work with 1 page, but 6 pages is just not okay. So let's just see what this person did here. And here, first of all, let's look at the alignment. I mean, here again, the bullets start to the right, then further down it starts here to the left. And then if we go down, we see things like this, for instance, where then suddenly something starts further to the right. I mean, this is surely not okay. This is not what I would recommend you to do. Then some other small sloppy things in the formatting. Let's notice how here this longer dash is used. I believe it's called an M dash, whereas here a shorter dash, an N dash, as I believe it's called, is used. These are just sloppy small things in the formatting that of course you should rather avoid. Next, let's talk about the professional experience. And here first, let's talk also about the order of the sections. So I'd say the general recommended way is that as long as you are a student, you start your CV after the personal details with the education section, because surely this is the focus for you as a student. But as soon as you are a professional, a working professional who moves out of university, I'd say it's customary then to move up the professional experience section and then only afterwards show the education section, because surely this will usually be what will be more relevant to the person reading the CV. What you should definitely avoid is writing about these experiences like you would write a paragraph in a book. So just full sentences, full paragraph of text. It's just really difficult just to quickly read over this, skim through it, and just in a straightforward way get the most important pieces of information out of it. It really forces the people to read through all of this, and this, even combined with the fact that the CV in itself is already so long, is just so annoying, just such a hassle for the person looking at that. I promise you the people will get annoyed that will need to read this. Also, the formatting, this of course is just not really nice, having a page break in the middle of such a position. Let's further move down. Here we now see all the courses that this person completed. I mean, it's surely great that the person did that many things. I mean, you're frankly not sure what all of this is. This looks like university courses. Surely you don't need to list all the courses that you attended at university on your CV. This just creates the impression that you're not able to distinguish the things that really matter from the things that maybe don't matter that much. So again, same thing here with awards, and the same with also published materials. So as long as you apply for an academic job, I'd argue your publication list does not need to be part of the CV. If you want to include it, I would rather maybe in your awards and honors section or your other qualification section, I just include one line and really just highlight the key achievements here. Maybe that you publish an article in an A+ or in an A journal, right? Things like that surely are impressive, but hey, come on. I mean, let's not write about newspaper articles that you wrote or your undergraduate thesis. This is surely not what should be relevant here for your CV. So enough about that, let's move to the next CV. So what I like is that it is on a one-pager format, but I think here the first impression, just without really looking at it, the first impression is that somehow this looks a little bit messy and a bit unusual, right? So let's just look into that. What do we see here? I mean, first of all, just the top section, I'd argue that you can include your personal details in an even more space-effective way as has been done here. Again, feel free to check out the CV template that I offer you as a download in the video description. Also, things like a LinkedIn profile, I'd say is not really needed. I mean, surely all the infos that you have on your LinkedIn, you will likely also have in here. Also, this very dark black bars here at the top. I mean, this looks just very dominant, this dark black, just a bit unusual, also not something that I would include. And also summary sentences like this here on top we already discussed for the first CV. So let's continue looking at this. And one thing that comes to mind is that even though this is a one-pager, there's still lots of white space. So the impression that this somehow creates is that even though you only had one page, you were not even able to fill all this page with good and relevant content. And then if you continue looking at that, you can see that here, just from the language and skills section, this takes almost half of the page. I mean, this is a section that probably just in a very small section in the bottom you would talk about. So for instance, a section that I will flesh out much more is the academic education section. So here, for instance, what are your majors? What are the main subjects that you're focusing on? What is your GPA? What are maybe some other academic leadership positions that you have? So surely these are things I'd talk about. And I'd say here in the work experience, there are a couple of things in here which are a little bit weird. I mean, what are these numbers here? 2 and 1. I'm just not really getting it. Also here, the formatting of these bullets is a little bit weird here. I mean, this should surely be indented here also to the level of the right. And let's just come back to the point of how you write bullets. So as I already hinted before, I would always stress on the impact and the results that you created for the company. So instead of writing automation of process with efficiency gains and risk reduction, I would rather always try to quantify it, right? So how did you implement these efficiency gains? To what measurable results did this really lead for the company? A key basic idea is that whenever possible, whenever it makes sense, you should include a number in the bullets of your CV just to make them tangible, make them graspable, help everyone understand the impact that you had. What I do like is what the person wrote here below with the volunteer coordinator. So talking about coordinating a team of 40 volunteers in a project. So I think this is great, really talking about the leadership that you had, how large the team was that you led. Though of course here it would have been great to also focus a bit more again on the impact that you had in your volunteering. So what was the good that you created for your community, for the organization here? Talk about that as well, because surely that was your goal for volunteering after all. Last but not least, let's look at one more. And again, let's start with first impression here. And I'd argue that likely this for me gives the strongest first impression. This is most closely to the layout that usually you can expect when applying to consulting, to banking, to more conservative professional services industries like that. So what you can see here is a nice and clean one-pager CV. You see how the name and the personal details really only takes minimal space in the header of the CV. This is the classical way of doing it. Here, this logo to the left, I'm not really understanding what exactly that is. Looks like maybe the logo of the university. Again, maybe I'm just not getting the meaning. I'd say probably not something that you need to include, but I'd say the overall layout, the structure of the CV is very good and clean. So you start with education, professional experiences, leadership and awards, volunteer experience. Very good, very clear, very well done. The one thing that maybe is a little bit unorthodox, just with these a bit more like modern design elements, are these points that were included here. But why not? I mean, again, surely this won't be a problem. One little, I guess, error is here the spacing between the points, right? So here apparently a space is missing, whereas here we have spaces. Here again a space is missing, here again a space is missing. Similar thing here also with the dashes. So here there are spaces between the dashes, here there are no spaces between the dashes. Here again inconsistencies with the M and N dashes, so the longer and the shorter dash. Again, maybe I'm just too super critical about these things, but these are things when I look at CVs, for whatever reason, they just directly jump in my eye. I just cannot help but notice these things. And of course, the underlying reasoning why these things maybe do matter is that if you work, for instance, in professional services, you create documents for your clients, you will for sure get feedback on points like this, right? So if in your client documents, you just mess up only these small layout inconsistencies, I mean, these are things that you will get feedback on from your project lead, for your team lead, and so on. And of course, the logic is that, this is your CV. So this is a document where you surely invested lots of time to really get it right, to the smallest amount of detail, right? I mean, the impression, of course, that this creates is that maybe you lack the attention of detail, and if you cannot even get such a document right, how are you expected to get these things right if it's already, late at night, you're under lots of pressure, in a short amount of time, you need to create a significant amount of documents. I mean, this is just the reasoning that an HR professional might have in his or her head when just looking at things like that and then making comments on that. But overall, I must say I do like it. Also notice here how the bullets are written. For instance, this person writes increased acetic acid product sales by 50% by revitalizing distributor portfolio and adding to customer base and so on and so forth. So you really focus on the impact. Here also the next one, contributed towards annual saving of over 80,000 euro, worked on something that reduced OPEX cost by 12%, saving 50,000 euro, and so on and so forth. So really always pushing for the measurable impact. This is the style that you want to go for. Just my little other layout style is, first of all, I really like this idea of bolding, things like that. I think this really helps guide the eye to the most important words, to the things that you really want to focus on. But then I would argue, if you do this, try to have then one bolded thing in all of the bullet points. So for instance, here is also actually quite big bullet point without any bolded elements. Here I would also argue that I think 2 lines of text for one bullet usually are enough. So I would rather condense a bullet of 3 lines a bit further to 2 lines. This just looks a little bit cleaner. Also, if then all the other bullets are 2 lines, as we have it here, then if you have suddenly a bullet of 3 lines, this somehow sticks out, probably not really necessary, rather cut it down. And then of course, if you do have a nice CV like that with all this content, probably what I would think about whether you wouldn't want to give a little bit more space to the volunteering experience. This can be a little nice additional touch on what you did, makes you seem to be a bit more of a rounded character, right? Not a person who just lives for his CV, not only a person who lives for his or her education, GPA and work experience. So if you were writing for social causes, I trust you raised money maybe, right, for a social cause. So why don't talk about that? How much money you raised, what your leadership position was, and bringing this to life, making sure that this happened. Last but not least, just because we haven't talked about it in that much detail, I'd argue probably in most regions it's very customary to, in your education section, when you talk about your degrees, that you also include your GPA. Again, I understand that university systems are a bit different, but if you received any type of numeric GPA, I would recommend you to also include it here on the CV. Sometimes people ask me, well, my GPA wasn't that strong, should I still include it even if it wasn't that strong? And I'd say yes, because at least myself, usually whenever I see a CV without GPA, I just assume that the person doesn't have such a great GPA, right? Because otherwise the person would show it on the CV. And then it's always just an annoyance to needing to look at the university transcripts maybe that the person hopefully then attached, just look through all the documents to pull out the GPAs that the person actually has. This is just annoying, a waste of time. Be transparent, include them. And of course, ideally what always also helps, and here probably I would only include it if really these numbers are good, but if you have a good also percentage rank, so if you can show that you are part of the top 5, top 10, maybe top 15% of your class, I would surely include this here in the CV as well, because of course this helps also the HR professional just to understand and contextualize the GPA a little bit better, especially maybe if you're applying from university that maybe isn't one of the big target schools where it's a bit less clear on what the GPA really means, whether this is a good result or not. So do you have any additional tips to share on how to write a strong CV? So just leave a comment in the comment section, trust you would all benefit from that. If you took any value out of this video at all, please destroy the like button for the YouTube algorithm and also hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay up to date on all my content. Thank you to all the members of From Learning for supporting the channel. This is very much appreciated. My name is Heinrich. I release videos every single weekend on Saturdays. See you again next week. Until then, all the best to you and bye bye.